Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to what I hope will be the first of many streams on the Southern Muster, which is basically going to be a right of center, hopefully mostly real life group in Australia, which is where I live, even though I'm an Englishman, really. Sorry, I'm a dirty, stinking bomb, but what can I do? As always, I'm going to start us off with a tune to give people time to join the stream, etc.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wall. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heathen folly? Bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to this, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wail gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come down to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with give or wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all of thankless years.
That,
Take up the white.
excuse the boomerisms, guys. That was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard, who is a great Australian musician. He's up in Queensland. if you like good music, go and check out his YouTube channel. You can also follow him on X, on Twitter, where we are also live now. Now, just to let people know who follow my channel but don't know anything about this stream, I live in Australia. I'm an Englishman. I'm absolutely a Pommy. But I've lived in Australia for 25 years now. And I moved here from South Africa, where I moved after I left the British Army, purely because I met the love of my life in South Africa, who was an Australian girl. But anyway, so I like Australia. It's a beautiful, huge country. It's an Anglo-Celtic country. It's part of the Anglosphere. And Generico, who has been on my Discord for quite a while, asked me about 3 or 4 weeks ago if I would do an Australian stream. And of course I said yes. I've done a few Australian streams in the past. And Generico has got his mate Don to come on here. And I'll be honest, I don't quite know what these chaps want to do, although I hope this will become something we do maybe once a month or something like that. Because I think, Australia does deserve a right of centre nationalist stream. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to either Don or Generico, whoever wants to introduce themselves and tell you what they would like to talk about.
Thank you very much. What an introduction. My goodness. I got to say, I love that song from Chris Gard. I forgot he even done that. Kipling's poetry, just for me, is fantastic. And he has put his song form is fantastic.
Could I just say, Generico, if you'd like to look at some stuff from Australia, which is fairly Kipling-esque in places, go and check out Banjo Paterson, of course. Because he's kind of like the Australian Kipling in many respects. But yeah.
Oh no, of course. I love the I don't know what to call it, maybe the old colonial art scene or something. There's an Australian poem that really resonated. I think it's either Lawson or Patterson, but Blood Upon the Wattle, and that it just resonates. Sorry to digress. Let's begin. So I'm Generico, joined by Don. So I'm an East Coaster up in Queensland, home of Chris Gard. Unfortunately, because Australia is such a large place, we're nowhere near one another, but that is what it is. So I'm everywhere online as Generico. I write as that. So that's sort of my alias, if you like. And I'm joined by Don, who is on the other side of the country.
Yes, on the west coast out here, one of the most remote cities in Australia. Yes, distance is definitely one of our biggest challenges. I'm a community organizer in Perth and the Southwest. I help get guys organized, connected, and start trying to foster a very natural, community and group.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So we're both, just for everybody listening, we're both sort of fairly involved with the Basket Weavers, which everybody sign up. Go this moment to the Basket Weavers website and sign up. We'd love to see you. We're very involved.
Generico, that's related to the British and American Basket Weavers, yes?
Absolutely. So Basket Weavers is international. That means they're everywhere. Predominantly in Britain and Europe, yes, and in America and Canada. They're sort of becoming fairly ubiquitous. But the problem is, I'm sure it's been mentioned, that we are just a very large country, and so the tyranny of distance plagues us. And it's been a bit of a rocky start for the Weavers in this country. There's been little pockets that have started here and started there. But it's been very difficult for people to sort of come together because even within one city, you've got people traveling, an hour or more just to come together and meet up. So it's been
Generico, could I just say, because I know there's going to be a lot of British and American people watching this stream.
Yeah, of
in due
course.
And just to let you guys know, basically Australia is pretty much the same size as the continental United States without Alaska, right? If you can picture America minus Alaska, the USA, that is how big Australia is. But we've only got about 26 million people.
Yeah, and we're all sort of very spread out. I tried to describe it even to some of the guys in the UK who were trying to get their head around it, and I said, sort of in my area alone, which is Queensland, just in the big city, which is Brisbane, trying to get people from one end of that urban area to the other to meet up is like trying to get people from as far as London to Birmingham to meet up. So that's just one city for us.
Yeah, for sure. If you were talking about Gold Coast to the Sunshine Coast, yeah,
Yeah,
easily.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's sort of one of the problems we've been trying to solve recently with the Weavers. But you know, this year it's seen a big resurgence. There's been a lot of very active and talented young people come out, and not just in my area as well. Certainly Don in Western Australia. But you know, the Sydney Weavers have seen a start, and there's been some activity in Canberra and Melbourne. But it's not anywhere near what the United Kingdom is, and that's a tremendous shame, because there's a lot of young, talented, sensitive young men out there who, you know, they're sort of, they're a bit directionless, maybe, you know, a bit politically isolated, and they're looking for an org like the Basket Weavers to be a part of. And you know, so that's what we're trying to provide for them is if we put the awareness out there a little bit, you know, doing streams like doing streams like yours, Iron Duke, and just raising awareness for what we are, which is, you know, the sensitive young men, the right of center, sensible centrists.
I would hesitate to say always sensitive young men. I think there's plenty of like average young men out there who are not particularly sensitive, but they are certainly oppressed in modern Australia if they're a white dude. There's plenty of those, I gotta say. Like that you all know, Generico, because you're on my Discord. My Discord is a closed, invitation-only Discord, right? I've got a lot of young guys there. I think I'm the oldest guy on the Discord, and you know, the stories that you hear about from guys in their 20s and 30s who are trying.
Oh, it's wild.
Doing dating with modern women, it's just so difficult, you know.
Or like young guys trying to get through university or a TAFE course or whatever.
Yes.
Even people in the corporate world who are trying to literally just get a paycheck, and then all of a sudden they'll get pulled aside for like, here's your mandatory HR training, and I think we all know what that means. But you know, these guys, they've got it rough. You know, we really feel for them, and so we're hoping to.
The younger guys, I do, mate. I would find it difficult. Like I'm 61 years old. I would find it very difficult to operate in this world today in 2026. If I was like 25, I'd find it really hard. I must say, I would.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully through basket weaving, it can provide that bit of that community. But that's why we've got sort of other projects in the work as well, and I'm hoping Don can talk a bit about that. Just to sort of bring people outside of the because that's what Basket Weavers was even from the start. It was bringing people from the online space into the IRL space, and it's definitely there. You know, you've got plenty of guys in the online space on X, on Discord servers, on you know the guys that got caught up doing the March for Australia activism. You know, all of these sort of the lost boys.
There's a lot more. There's a lot less in Australia, Generico, if you will forgive me for saying so, than you might expect. And we were chatting before we went live, and a lot of Australian right-wing people are either libertarians, who are rightly or wrongly called lolbertarians very often, and I think sometimes rightly, to be honest, or else they're a bit more extreme than that, and it's easy for the politicians and the mainstream media to demonize them, probably wrongly in most cases, but they still do,
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think that the directions that are out there, the libertarians and perhaps other directions that exist, they're certainly not politically useful, and they're certainly. I've always put it as either helping the powers that be or entering their crosshairs sort of deliberately. So there are other useful means of organizing and associating out there, and I think that the Weavers are definitely they're a proven example in places like the UK, in places like USA that have shown their success, and it's a place for people to come together from which other more productive and more useful things emerge.
Yeah, I think anything can really come. Okay, the online space is very much the realm of the macro. Where you sort of you can put together maybe magazines and you can do something, but for anything real to sort of happen, it needs to be in reality. The moment we find ourselves in now is where we need to move away from, talking and doing everything online and start actually meeting and forming these connections in real life. Like, for example, like there's, like you were talking about before, there are a heap of problems, particularly facing young men. Some of them are in dating, and then that also comes down to, okay, like, are you able to find employment? Are you able to gain status? Like all of these problems, they all sort of feed into each other. So if you can sort of take these young men in, associate with them and build them up, give them a network where they're able to find work, where they're able to find camaraderie, where they're able to compete against other men and build up their status, within that hierarchy and within that that group of friends.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Don. Mentorship, and particularly, in the modern world, there's a fair number of young chaps, young blokes whose dad is not necessarily at home. So that makes it even more important, I think. But yeah, I definitely think mentorship, mateship. I mean, one of the most Australian of all things is mateship, surely,
Yeah, absolutely, and sort of having these values is fine in the abstract, but when you've not got the opportunity to exercise them, and goodness knows, your average normie, even just trying to find friends and find time to do things, it's becoming a less and less prevalent in modernity. Everyone's isolating on their phones, or they're too busy with work or whatever. So finding, even just for the average normie, finding time to spend with people of good value is sort of critical to practice these skills, because they're never going to work in isolation. So maybe now's a good time to sort of talk about maybe some of the things we've been doing with the Weavers, just to give us, just to give some of the listeners a flavor of the sort of things we've been up to. Just in terms of like when we meet up, what do we do? Because you can get a bunch of young men in a room and sort of like, well, what do you do now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can sort of talk about what we've been doing here in WA, which has been quite successful. So for the last year or so, I've been hosting soirees, picnics, hiking events, and everything of sort of that flavor. The Weavers, I think each one across the country, you're going to find is going to have its own flavor. We tend to have, how do I say, inward-facing events that are more, I would say, we're trying to create something a little bit higher class, something a little bit more elevated. So soirees, trying to go to and create these nice events. And then more outward facing events where we're trying to engage with the community. So having like inviting our families out for picnics and going for hikes and so forth. And like this is obviously we've been working through word of mouth, and like, how do I say, you gain a particular reputation as you're going about this. Okay, this is where the interesting people are. This is where the interesting conversations are happening. This is where the interesting people are. And if I want to engage in that, you know, how do I want to represent myself? So we're trying to lift everything up as we're going along. And it's also creating opportunities. So it's creating this network, you know, across the city of Perth and across the southwest, where people are, you know, if they're fallen on hard times and they're trying to look for a job, then there's people out there willing to offer them opportunities. If they're going through particular struggles, then there's a community like they're willing to rally around them and help them through that and offer them guidance. So like this is something that's been just sort of evolving over the last year or so. And yeah, I'm talking with others and trying to, how do I say, transplant what we're doing and the successes we're having here in Perth and trying to take that across Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Don is the gold standard of weavers in Australia at the moment. The things that he's been doing, just listening to some of the things he's been doing when we talk privately, is very like it's outstanding. The amount of community he's been able to build and the people he's been drawing in for these events. I always find it's difficult in any sort of sphere of our guys. It's difficult to attract. It's difficult to attract sort of the social scene, you know, young women to talk to young men because, you know, they're all awkward and young and whatever. But Don's gone right up and beyond in order to make it like a real living community. And, you know, he should be tremendously proud of himself as well. So hopefully we can transplant some of the lessons that he's learned and that he's practiced and put into place to other parts of the country, because you know, to be honest, and it's no shade to anyone in my particular group, the Southeast Queensland Weavers, but we're definitely not at the same scale. So we'll do all sorts of interesting things. You know, we'll have our meets, we'll, you know, maybe go to the pub or maybe go for a hike, and you know, there's been some ambitious hikes, of course, and that has been really good. I find from a team building perspective is to find young men and put them through something mildly difficult together, and that sort of helps to build and forge those bonds of brotherhood between men. And it sounds sort of silly on the face of it, but it's very true. Something deep in our psychology.
Not at all, Generico. This is, I think, very important for young dudes to go and do stuff with other young dudes, you know, and have a laugh. Because that's just what blokes do. But equally, what you were saying about Don, you know, if you get a good group of ambitious, intelligent young blokes together, do you know what? That's going to attract young women. It just will. So that's a good thing. And also, you know, if you're, I don't know, 23 years old, and if you're in Western Australia and you're out of work, but you want to get a job and you've got a good character, you know, you know, you're not a criminal or anything like that, I'm sure somebody like Don would be able to help you find a job. You know, so yeah, all of this makes perfect sense, to be honest.
Yeah, if you are in Perth, definitely reach out. like you'll definitely be in a better position associating with us in a year's time. And I think that's kind of the the litmus test. And it's like there's obviously been other more radical organizations that have been in the media, and they've sort of denigrated. These guys have charges. There's been a bit of reputation destruction that they've sort of dragged these younger gentlemen through. And I just don't think that's the way. You want to take your young guys that are associating with you, and you want to raise them up. You want to see them reach the best of their potential. And if you are in Perth, definitely reach out. We have a very strong community here, and you'll be in a better place in a year or so's time.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys will probably laugh at this, all right? But I remember years and years ago, and Don, you'll particularly laugh at this, I'm sure. But years and years ago, I watched that movie Red Dog. Very famous Australian film, and I like it because, like, I like all dogs and a fair number of human beings, and I just thought to myself, yeah, if I was a young dude, I'd go do that. If I wasn't doing something else, if I hadn't, if I wasn't going to uni to do this, that, or the other, or going to become a plumber or a roofer or whatever, I'd probably go do that. I'd probably go and work on a mine somewhere. The pay's not bad. It's kind of like 2 or 3 weeks on and 1 week off, but it's not a bad thing for a young bloke to do at all. And in a way, and I know you two guys are both ex-military, as am I. It's a bit military in some respects as well. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I would say that it adopts the beneficial components of being in the military and sort of uses them to our advantage.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the mines, but as a young man, I don't know. You're faced with a couple of choices. You either go to university, or through luck, you find work in your locality, so Perth or Sydney or wherever it is, and you're able to live there and more easily be able to form a community there. Although we are rather deracinated, it's very hard to, it takes a very extraordinary will to make things happen, to bring people together, but it's still possible. But it's even harder sort of on a mine site. Yes, you have the sort of camaraderie of the guys around you that you're working with. And it's definitely like working on a tight-knit team is, it's great. But you're away from your partner, your wife, your missus, you're away from friends, you're missing particular events. And it's, if you want to make that money, it's there to be made as a young man, but it's always a sacrifice.
That was my point, Don, is if you're a young dude, right, and you're not in a full-time relationship, for example, that might be a way to start setting yourself up, is really what I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, those opportunities are definitely there. There's a little bit of barrier to entry, but it's not that hard. It's definitely doable. And I mean, for Australia, I've been to quite a few countries, that are particularly prosperous, but it's incredibly hard to get ahead. It's incredibly competitive. There are a lot of people there, and then I've been to countries that have been absolute, sort of war torn. They're not the best places to be. Yeah, so we're very lucky here. Like, take every challenge and every opportunity as as something to grow from.
Would I be right in saying, Don? And listen, Western Australia is the only, apart from Tasmania, it's the only bit of Australia I haven't been to. But I think I'm right in saying that. Well, I hope I'm right in saying that. If people were to get a hold of you, if they were a young fella with a good character and all this kind of stuff, you'd probably be able to help them out with that kind of stuff in order
Yeah, I
to get into some sort of work, you know.
I could definitely sort of lay out the path to get into it. But yeah, if you're interested in business, there's definitely contacts that I could get you in contact with. If you're interested in construction at sort of the higher levels as well, I can get you in contact with those. And if you're university educated and you're interested in the institutes, think tanks, and so on and so forth, there's a few people I can get you in contact with there as well if you want to, that's something that you want to pursue. But I mean, this sort of comes back to creating the sort of foundation and network on the ground. It's like going from the bottom up and creating the community, you sort of yourself need to go out and keep a sort of running tally of, okay, these are all my contacts. These are the sort of movers and shakers in my my locality. These are the organizations, and then getting people together.
Yeah,
Bringing
definitely.
those people together.
Real life stuff is always, if you know people and you know them in real life and you trust them in real life, that's going to help you. It is always going to help you. Real life communities are definitely the way to go for sure.
Yeah. I mean, when we're faced, like we were talking earlier, we're faced with these particular problems that sort of all feed into each other, and they're all of a political nature. You can sort of put the blinders on and you sort of narrow in, and your thinking becomes very political. But you kind of need to move beyond that. Like, if you look back through history, at when the tribes were starting, it was always a group of guys getting together, and they were bonded by that particular mateship and friendship. The Greeks, this is a Bronze Age pervert in some of these books. He was going, you have the sort of the longhouse, and you have it just becomes suffocating, and the young men are like, right, we've had enough of this. And they sort of, get in their ships and sail out and create something of their own, and then the cycle sort of continues again.
I love it.
Go and attack Troy.
Yes.
Yes, the manabund, the manly manabund sails out in opposition to the female longhouse. It's perfect.
Yeah, and but this sort of touches on the pre-political. There's many people who I have, I guess, in the political, I have disagreements with, right? But these are guys of good character. We can go through these debates, but what sort of smooths those over is that we have a connection. Like, I see he has a reputation in his life that he has upheld. I can see that his heart's in the right place, and he's pursuing truth. And how to say that he's trying to foster a future that I agree with. Like, we agree on the true, the good, and the beautiful, and that sort of acts as a foundation. But then there's also like the personal bond that you're sort of forming. It's that pre-political. It's like, people don't start a city because they have the same agreement, or a tribe or a clan or whatever, because they agree on the political, what the taxes are going to be and so on and so forth. They do it because they understand that they have a shared future together, that there's a personal bond.
I love it. It reminds me of when Furious spoke at the forum, the First Fleet Forum in Australia. He said the oft-repeated quote that Rome wasn't great. He said Rome was great because men loved her, and not men loved her because she was great. And that's tremendously important. And I love that you're speaking to the pre-political we. We used to have the concept of, if I may, Iron Duke, I'll spit this last one out and I'll hand it over, is that we used to have the loyal opposition in a concept in our countries, that it was, we all understood we were oriented towards the same purpose, even though we disagreed on the methods to get there. And that's definitely something that we've lost. So I'll hand it to you, Iron Duke.
No, I was just agreeing with you, Generico. Like, Rome wasn't loved because she was great. Rome was loved because people loved Rome. And that's exactly the same as Australia or Britain or Canada or New Zealand. Or, you know, the people of those countries loved their country, and that made them great. Yeah, I'm just totally agreeing with you, Generico, really.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And look, it's not just Brisbane, it's not just Perth, it's not just where we are. Every major city in Australia has some Weaver activity, even if it's minimal. So if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, you know, goodness, maybe my area is too small or whatever. No, absolutely not. Go sign up to the website. Go talk to the people at the Weavers. They'll, you know, there's a bit of vetting, of course. We don't just let anybody in. Otherwise, you get some, you know, some nosy lefty journalists who want to cause hassles that might get through the cracks. So there's a bit of vetting. But any city in Australia, go and sign up. Even if you think you're too small, you're not.
Sure, that's true. I'm sure that's true. And you know, you cannot beat real life friendships. You know, when you're online, you think you know people, and sometimes you do. You know, and after a long time, like I've known people online for 6 or 7 years, and there are a handful of people who I absolutely trust, who I know online, because I've known them, like I said, almost a decade now. But for the most part, you can't do that. Whereas in real life, when you can see someone's expression and hear their tone of voice, that's a big difference. It really is.
Yeah, so maybe this is a good time we can segue to maybe the specific projects we're talking about. So I know we've talked about basket weaving as the vehicle which we can meet up with, and the Weavers are sort of just they're just a meetup organization and really nothing more. And other things can grow from that, which is good. But Don and I sort of have other specific projects that have evolved out of the weaving project, and you know, some of it's to draw people in, some of it's to build more from it. And I'm wondering maybe if Don, if this is not the time to mention something about that.
Generico, can I just say, right?
You can say anything.
You know, just a few mates meeting from the army, for example. Yeah, you'll get job offers, you'll get all sorts of advantages, shall we say. That's just, you know, half a dozen mates, me from the army. You'll get that kind of thing all the time. And the basket weavers will magnify that like 1,000 times. So,
yeah,
yes,
we used to call it the old boys
yeah.
network.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. It's your mate network, you know. This is always important. And because, as both of you have said, I think, since we started, the modern Western male is so deracinated and often doesn't have all that many mates because he's so busy working and studying and whatever he's doing. Form mate friendship webs. It's really important.
Yeah, no, come find your people. We're here. You know, we're here. We're waiting. Come find us. Absolutely. So, on that note, Don, maybe you could segue that into some of the specific projects you're looking to form in conjunction with the Beowulf Foundation.
Sure. Yes. So coming from the military, I've obviously you have leadership programs and so forth, and that sort of I guess informed my view. So when I started about a year ago, and it's like, okay, this is going to be my project, and I'm going to try and build this up to be as big as it possibly can. So I went out. I obviously started working FIFO, but during that time away, I would be organizing meetups, I would be making reservations, I would be doing advertising, I would be making connections, I would be setting up coffees, coffee dates or whatever with people when I was coming back. I was trying to, how would I say, create a map of the city that I'm in. I was trying to create a map of Perth. Who are the movers and shakers? Who are the organizations where I can find my tribe? Where are my people, basically? So I would go to these social events, I would go to church meets, I would go, and then I started to establish like a sort of core group of guys that would be in the church. So then I would get invited to these, for example, I'm Catholic, going through the process of becoming Catholic, but I would get invited to like the Orthodox Church, meet a heap of guys there, sort of see, who are the interesting people there, who are the most articulate, who are the ones gauging it with the most interesting material, reading, and so on and so forth. And then inviting these people and sort of having them just bounce off each other and have projects and not what sort of spring for that. So yeah, one of the guys that he'll come to the meets sort of semi-regularly, he's started a book club, and there's been other clubs that have sort of sprung from there. And the guys now are sort of trying to get together and thinking of, okay, let's go out and let's highlight particular establishments and businesses and artisans like in our local area. Let's go down to the farmers market and so on and so forth. Like, these are sort of ideas in their infancy, but it's sort of coming from this wellspring of all these interesting people I've been able to gather in my locality, sort of bouncing ideas off each other. And of course, like, I want to keep things sort of on the down low. Like, I work through like word of mouth, like, oh, do you want to come down to like this interesting event? And I keep the doors open. I say, hey, if you want to invite someone down, by all means, but whoever you bring down is a reflection on you and your character. Don't bring down a schizophrenic or someone who's going to bring a disrepute on themselves and so on. So, this thing that we sort of have in Perth has sort of been growing and sort of at the moment reaching a bit of a critical mass. And what I want to go to other organizers and say, hey, this is how you organize an event. You need to, set the reservation. You need to have a connection with the event organizer, for that establishment. You need to advertise 2 weeks, 1 week, and then the day before. You need to go out and you need to be continually messaging like all these, in different group chats and so on and so forth, and then go out and engage. Like, is someone having a problem in their own life? Like, because you're trying to be more communitarian, like, you need to give up a little bit of your individuality. You need to be willing to, if a guy's going through like hard times, be there for him, sort of lift him up, give up a little bit of yourself for those around you. And so what I want to do is I want to
John, be a mate. Is what you're trying to say, is be a mate.
Basically, but also to go to other communities across Australia and say, hey, here's the framework. This is how you organize an event. This is how you work out. You do like your area study. You go out and you sort of get the lay of the land in your city, or like to say like in the, for the people, like what is the human terrain that you are within? Who can you reach out to? Who's, the adversaries, who are the aligned, and so on and so forth. And this is how you sort of operate in that space. If that sort of makes sense. That is my project that I'm trying to put forward.
Sounds really cool, Don. I look, everything that you and Generico have said so far sounds perfectly sensible to me, and a good way to help your friends, and particularly young blokes who, as we have already said, they tend to struggle a bit these days. At this point, I've got to welcome my mate, Furious Pertinax. Marcus, Furious Pernex, as he is sometimes known. I really like this chap. He's one of the best guys I know online. So welcome, mate. How are you going?
Good, thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much. I'm humbled by that introduction, and obviously our good fellow friends here, Don and Generico. I apologise for my tardiness, and before anyone says, "Oh, you tardy wogs have no
Late.
time for time management," I spent the entire day on the farm mulesing and drenching sheep. So I was being a proper Australian.
So it sounds like quite well. All right, hang on. I've dealt with sheep. Sheep are some of the most stupid animals in the entire
Oh,
world.
they are.
Yeah.
They are the devil.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it's pretty down to earth. So good on
Oh,
you,
it
mate.
is. You know,
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that our circles. I mean, how can I put this in brief terms? Is that, you know, leftist intellectualism is built, let's just say it, upon utopianism and lies, whereas the right wing obviously has a far greater capacity to be congruent with truth and with, you know, existential facts of the world and the universe writ large. But both sides can like attract like a degree of kind of haughtiness to them, or you know, I hate to use the word snobbery, but I think you guys know where I'm going with this. The good thing about menial jobs is they do keep you down to earth. Like, you know, the fact that I'm on a stream with, you know, a couple of my mates talking about, you know, I suppose culture and politics, when you've just washed off, you know, a whole bunch of lamb poo and leonic acid and dust, you sort of feel a bit more humble for the experience. So I highly recommend, if anyone's actually never done some farm work, you should go out and do it.
Furious, can I ask you, right? Like,
Sure.
I dealt with sheep only for a few months in South Africa, and I worked on a farm in South Africa, a sheep farm.
Mhm.
And the guy had no sheepdogs; he just had a load of Zulus. But he was an Italian guy, actually. Now that I think about it. But anyway, yeah, we got pasta quite often as like our dinner. But anyway, I got hit by sheep quite often in my hand and my wrist and all this. Is this a normal farming thing when you're doing things with them, or was
Oh,
I just
absolutely.
clumsy?
I literally look like I've been beaten in a car park by a bunch of you know, by a bunch of recent imports. I've got like hoof marks all over my chest because to
You
do
look like you've been diversified. You've been enriched.
basically I've been enriched by what would you call them? You know, grazing mammals. No, no, because to do the job where you have to vaccinate them and for those that aren't familiar with the term drenching, all that is you have basically like a trigger gun with like a spurt on the end of it, and you have like a pack with medicine, and you sort of put the squirter down their throat and you pull the trigger.
Yeah,
And they swallow it.
that's what I
It's
was
deworming.
doing.
Yeah,
Furious. That's what I was doing.
yeah.
And
Drenching,
I
yeah.
got hit so often
Yeah.
in my wrist and my knee. It was fucking
Yeah.
believable, to be honest.
And my old man and I just just because of, you know, IRL things, you know, we're probably like a month overdue. And for those who have worked with them, like lambs grew, like once they stop being little small lambs, they become the word that is used is sort of like a hogget. A hogget is kind of like an adolescent. You know, it's the same thing you use, same terminology used for I think like in cattle, they use the word yearling. So basically, it's like something that's around a year old. Although these lambs are not a year old, but it's the same kind of categorization where they're adolescent. They're not quite babies, but they're not fully fledged adults. And when lambs get big, they get really strong. And because they're not mature, they're not placid. They're like really energetic. And because they're heavy, they're difficult to lift. And so we're putting them in these cradles, and they're like too big for the cradles. And these cradles have like little loops in them where you sort of stick the rear legs into them so they can't kick you. But getting them in there is the challenge. And because they're strong and they're heavy, I literally look like I've been assaulted. I've just got like a litany of hoof marks over my chest. And
Well,
actually, last year I got whacked in the eye. I looked like I got beaten. I had a black eye for like a week afterwards.
Guys, the classic Australian expression, "you dag," is a
Yeah,
sheep expression, by the way.
That's right.
Anyway,
Sorry, I've derailed the whole conversation. So let's get back to brass tacks, Shulman.
No, by all means. I was about ready to get right into the very very important subject of sheep's dags.
I just got the end of
guys. Do you know what? I get what you're saying, Don, of course, but you know what? This is part of Australian culture. The Clip Go, the Shears Boys, and all this stuff. The songs. This is actually quite important to Australia in some ways.
Sheep have been here for almost as long as we have. It's
merino sheep were brought in pretty early from, I think, Spain.
Spanish breed, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he pinched them from South Africa, if I'm remembering correctly. I've just been listening to the Political History of Australia podcast by John Ruddick, which is an excellent little piece of history. I'm 90% sure that he pinched them from South Africa somehow, but I'll review on that. It was
which wouldn't be surprising actually, because a lot of sheep breeds have come to Australia from South Africa.
Well, the Spanish had a bit of a law against exporting the merino sheep because they were such quality wool. The Spanish put a lockdown on it. They said nobody else can have them, especially not the British. It's very taboo. But there were these merinos that had been found their way to South Africa somehow, possibly through some trade with the Dutch when they were still a Spanish colony. And John, I cannot believe that I'm forgetting his name, the fellow from the Rum Rebellion, not McDonald, McSomething. It's very embarrassing now that I can't remember his name. MacArthur, John MacArthur, that's him. He when he was coming back and forth between Britain and Australia, he wrangled this deal to smuggle them out of South Africa and bring them to Australia. And since then, the economy ran off the sheep's back, or so they say.
Indeed. Until we become speculator's paradise, but that's another topic for another day, right?
Yeah, indeed. But merino sheep, big time. I've been to the big merino, which is, if you've never been to Australia, as you travel around this enormous country, you will see big things in places. Like there are big pineapples, big trout,
big prawns, big cows.
We have the big avocado, the big banana.
Yeah, you name it. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just an Aussie. Somehow it's an Aussie thing.
They're like Pokemon. You have to go and collect them all.
Well, not really, but I've been to a few. I always thought that Dunny Doo should have the big dunny, but that was just me.
Broom should have the big broom. Bannister should have the big banister.
Yep. But I don't know. I like Australian culture. It's kind of funny. But also bear in mind that in the 1890s, Australia had about 20% as many pianos as it had human beings. So Australia at one stage was pretty damn cultured, really.
We're a man of culture, of course.
Yeah. Australians often think, oh no, it's all just working class, dudes. Not really, actually. Australia, once upon a time, was one of the most cultured countries in the world. And that was taught to me by my good friend, the Franklin. So,
Yeah. It's worth mentioning as well, this would have been, I mean, the city obviously has its own, story in this sense. And of course, I'm not saying the people in the city didn't have pianos. That would be ludicrous. But in the city, of course, there were obviously a larger number of schools. There were, public libraries. Town halls were a prominent thing. If we go back to prior to the 80s, so availability of something such as piano was far more commonplace. We're saying in a country town of which I grew up in one myself. you know, are you going to drive 45 minutes for piano lessons? No. You know, if you're a household that values music or has some kind of nascent musical talent, you're going to have a piano. And I mean, even for my own personal experience, I would say that in like the quote unquote mini district of my town, which, you know, let's just say would probably be an area of say 40 or 50 kilometers squared, which was half an hour from the closest town. 2/3 of families had their own pianos, and in some cases, like families that had like, you know, like branches, like, you know, cousins and that sort of stuff. Like each auntie and uncle would kind of have their own pianos. So you're talking like in one family, you've probably got like 5 or 6 pianos, because that was the thing back then. Like, you know, you had isolation, physical isolation, you know, isolation of time and of being able to share resources and share sort of, you know, community facilities. I mean, you know, a lot of people kind of think, oh, you know, yeah, we have AI chatbots that can do everything for us, but these are all very, very, very recent inventions. Like, you know, society in like the pre-digital age was a very different place, which, I mean, ING could be more clued up with that than any of us. But I mean, I can speak for myself and Generico, surely. Like, we remember the time before the digital era, and it was very different.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, we're getting old, Generico.
Man, you reminded me every time you talk.
I do not have a smartphone even today. But I
Based
gotta
on you.
say, no, I don't. Listen, I don't. But
No, I'm serious. Like, it's a good decision.
probably, but yeah, if you look at countries like Australia in the earlier days, guys were dumped on, you know, a few acres of land,
Mhm.
which was bush basically,
And often marginal country.
yeah, and they had to clear it all. They had to chop down the trees, then dig out the roots before they could plow it. You know, the whole bloody place was like, there wasn't a road in Australia before the first fleet arrived. Not one.
No, and they did it all with horses and hand tools. It was pre-industrial. Giants,
100%.
lions among men they were.
Yeah, the bravest and best blokes you could ever possibly meet.
Strong,
and
stoic,
they were
hardworking.
Yeah, those guys, and they often arrived there, by the way, like normally from England or Ireland, and they arrived there with like a wife and 2 or 3 kids, and the dude had to go and do all that bloody work on his own. And sometimes the Aboriginals would come and chuck spears at you, and if you couldn't fight back, you were fucked. You know. The country was made by those guys. It was.
Absolutely. And I think even though probably Australians in many ways share a closer cultural affinity with Britain, because we, up until very recently, we had a much greater proportion of Anglo-British or Anglo-Celtic descent than even America, right? But this is, I think, in where we diverge from the British a little bit, is that in this instance, in this way, we do share that settler mindset with, say, like, you know, what they call red America, like flyover country America. The idea of, you know, going out into the wilderness or going out into the bush, and also we probably share this too with say Rhodesians and South Africans going into the bushveld, you know, the Afrikaner voortrekkers.
For sure.
You know, and you're going out into hard marginal country, you know, with a hostile environment and, you know, harsh weather, harsh conditions, animals, natives, etc., and trying to carve out something resembling a civilization in those conditions. And I think even continental Europeans struggle to encapsulate that.
And furious at the same time, you're trying to like protect your wife and your children at the same time as you're trying to make this like edge of civilization thing, you know?
Correct.
Oh, usually the woman who was, you know, the wife or the mother, she was in the thick of it, you know, giving birth to, you know, a litter of kids as you would have done in the age, and
with
also
musket in hand.
musket in hand, fighting off those throwing spears, plowing the land. You know, I've got stories from my own history of because my own ancestors who didn't have a horse. So the man yoked himself to the plow and his wife steered it. These are the sort of lions that built this country. So anytime I'm feeling black pilled at all ever, I just remember back and think, gosh, these were some wonderful people, and our, their blood runs through our veins. So it's just brilliant.
We have no issues compared to these guys, mate. Honestly, we think we do, and it sometimes looks very bleak. But if you look at some of these guys, that like we have it easy compared to these blokes. Honestly,
yeah, a very soft, squishy existence, all of us.
Absolutely right. If I may just quickly, because I just noticed something has popped up in the comments here, I want to address something mentioned by Dave Smith, 9189. He says, well, yeah, the previous comment is rural depopulation is important, and then he says, I tried to say rural repopulation is important, but actually it's a case of both. Depopulation is a terrible, terrible thing which has happened alongside the urbanization of Australia with catastrophic effects, and repopulation of these rural centers are important. And I mean, maybe you guys might dissent here or disagree, and perhaps it's a place for an important conversation, or at least a relevant one, on good terms. But there is something to be said that, yeah, you can't always retreat, and I agree with that, and that, you should, quote unquote, fight for territory, or at least, partake in the struggle for one's patrimony on whichever level it is. But there is a place and time where one has to cut their losses. I mean, Iron Duke, you served in the military. I'm sure you understand or appreciate the notion of, cutting your losses while you're still ahead, or retreating before the encirclement closes, so to speak. And I think with a lot of these urban areas, not all of them, there are some that are still worth having a presence in, but
enemy territory, you say?
Well, this is the thing. It's like, if I can use a couple of obvious examples, right? It's like, if you're a heritage American, you're still living in Baltimore, like, you need your head red. If you're still in Dearborn, you need your head red. Like, there are places that are beyond Melbourne. If you're in places where you are an absolute, by orders of magnitude, a minority, and everybody around you hates you and disapproves of your presence, and even though that's your patch of turf and that's your birthright, which I agree with, so, you have to also be realistic as to your present situation and what your prospects are going forward. And what we actually can do and ought to do is sort of, coalesce in areas in which we can make up a functional majority and reform communities that have high trust.
Yeah, go find your people. They're still out there. They didn't vanish into the ether. Go and find them.
Yeah. There's also something on this.
Listen, I'm just going to ask Don to talk about this, but I would say this: like, Australia traditionally was one of the most urbanized countries in the world. It was always like all the population in Australia was in Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide, Perth,
Brisbane, etc.
Yeah, and Brisbane. Whereas the population in the countryside was relatively small. It's got much worse in recent times, as I'm sure Furious would say, because what happens is, if you live in a small country town in Australia, and to explain this to people overseas, a small country town in Australia is not much more than a village often.
Precisely.
It's often
a couple of thousand people, let's say. Yeah,
if you're lucky. So the schools closed down, and the pubs closed down, and the chicks all move away, and the blokes all move away, and it just dies.
Precisely.
And obviously that is like a bad thing. It just is a bad thing, just as any small town or village dying is a bad thing. But I was just going to ask Don what he thinks is there a counter to that? I don't know.
Yeah, you have to make how to say, you have to rally and find your people and meet with them like in your locality and just do what you can. Like, I don't know, all, you, you can all move to the same street. You can like work, but you need to be like in the same physical location, whether it is like the cities. And this is why the cities have, the rule has always been from the cities. It's because you get a unified elite within the city, and they're in that proximity and able to adjust and make decisions and pivot and put their weight and force behind particular things. You can't do that from the countryside. Like, you can't give up the cities. I understand, like, okay, it's terrible what's happened. Like, I grew up on a farm. It's terrible what's happened to these lovely Australian towns, but you know you can't shake off the importance of the city. Like, the city is the
Don, you're right. You're right. My friend, the distributorist in America, he often makes this point. You can't give up the cities if you want to win. You can't, because
No.
the little towns are never going to take over the cities. It's not going to happen.
No, and
No.
we should realize that there's sort of pockets around, I guess the archetypal inner city areas where you do have the enrichment, you do have the diversity, and my goodness, I know they exist. Living there is just not sensible, and I can tell you that from experience. But there are places within the cities that maybe they're a bit more expensive, maybe they're a bit harder to access, but there's room to do things there. And if you're let's say a young man, well, wouldn't you much rather pool your resources with 3 or 4 other young men in your 20s, and let's say, and rent out at one of these places that's sort of closer to people in your environment than trying to make it work in one of these diversified areas. There's ways and means to go about doing it.
Generico, listen, I'm an old bastard, all right? I'm 61 years old. But I gotta say, if I was, I don't know, 20, say, or 21, or even 25, to be honest, and I wasn't in a full-time relationship, I would go to Western Australia and I would say to myself, right, I'm going to work here for 5 years and I'm going to make enough money that when I've done it, I can go wherever I want in Australia and start my own business. And that's when I'll find my cheeky babe and all the rest of it. But that's just
I love
me,
it. I love it. There's work to be had. Apparently dredging sheep, if anyone's interested.
Well played, Jericho.
Be prepared for a lot of bruises. And don't know, guys, look, I forgive me, Furious, but yeah, working on a farm ain't gonna make you any money, all right? Unless the dude likes you and helps you out, that ain't gonna help you. But you can go and work on a mine or something like that, and if you do it for 5 years, yeah, you could have enough money to start a business for sure.
I will say though, if anyone who's actually quite sincerely and genuinely considering it as a choice, like as a life choice, if you are diligent in the undertaking and you're realistic about, like you say, ING, you can sort of give yourself anywhere from maybe a period of like 3 to 6 years or even more. In fact, I know someone who in fact worked for my own family for some time, but he came in as a Kiwi backpacker. I think I just started high school. So like we're talking like 20 odd years ago now. And he went from like one farm to the other farm to in the same district, like just when he sort of, he felt that his time of learning with what in one place was over. And I mean, he's now like almost turning 50 and he's resident in the community, and he's just saved up a bunch of money. He just, buys rental properties in the city, and he still works on the farm, loves the lifestyle, loves the peace of it. And if you can embed yourself, if not with like one good family or even like a good community, you can actually make a decent life of it. Because in the end, if you're in a situation where, you know, you're being put up in terms of, you know, living like accommodation, you know, you're not paying utilities, or you pay like a fraction of utilities, and you don't have to drive very far. You know, like all these other associated costs that tend to creep in with city living. I mean, if you're a young man and you're strict, and you know, you don't, you know, quote unquote piss it up the wall and all that sort of stuff, you can actually still do quite well as a farmhand. And I will say this, as you know, having had a chance to observe it, and actually having done contract work since my folks sold like the old heritage farm was, and you know, like I've done contracting myself, is that the farmers who have survived to this point, there aren't really any more cheap farmers around who scrounge by an oily rag. The farmers that are left in the industry are very, very competent and very, very good farmers, and often tend to be actually quite well off. If they've survived this long, they're usually very good farmers. So if you're very serious about the endeavor, I would encourage you to try. Just be judicious as to whom you throw your lot in with. But there are very good people around anywhere. It could be rural Victoria, New South Wales, Southern Queensland, WA.
Furious.
They're around.
Furious. Can I ask you, do
Sure.
these gangs of guys still go around shearing sheep and stuff like that?
They still, like, those big contract groups do exist, but they are a lot fewer and far between than they used to be. Like, I remember, for example, as a kid, like, you know, when I was at primary school, right? And my dad had, and like, you know, not just him, but like our neighbors just had the pick of the litter. You know, there'd always be one or two Aussie crews. You know, there'd be like a, you know, Victorian crew, there'd be a WA crew, there'd be a crew from this part of the state or that part of the state. There's always a couple of Kiwi crews, and they're all competing for the same work. Whereas now, like, you're lucky if each town has, or each district has like one or two shearing crews to choose from. That side of the industry has lost a lot of competitiveness in the last 20 years.
Interesting. That's interesting. Again, but you know, if you're a young dude, that's a job you could go do.
If you're in doubt, give it a clout, young man.
Yeah, give it a go, guys. I mean, is it going to be worse than working in a cafe in Melbourne? Probably not, to be honest. You know, it's probably not going to be worse than that.
Yeah, I will say that, you know, in the end, even if you consider it something that's not suitable for yourself or you don't like, I mean, what's the worst thing that you've done? You've learned to drive a tractor, you've learned to use a power tool, you know, you've learned to dig a trench, you've learned to cut wood. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to speak on that for a moment, because it's just going around town and meeting young guys. Like, I didn't have a farmhand existence when I grew up, but I had a sort of semi-rural life, and the amount of skills that I picked up, like learning tools, learning animals, learning something about bushcraft, even, you know, it just came sort of, you understood that it was natural because other kids were doing it around with you. They're all sort of learning the same set of skills. But now when I go out into the cities and I'm meeting young guys, it is crazy. It is crazy the amount of, I don't know, just the lack. You know, people that can't use basic hand tools, people that can't, you know, can't fix basic things. You know, I can't even begin to describe it. And like, even changing a tire, you know, they're talking about young men.
Yeah.
And yeah, so of course it's critical. If anyone's thinking about spending some time there, please, like, for your own benefit.
Oh, absolutely. And this the decanters.
Guys, can I just tell you something, right? And this is purely coincidental. I spent the last couple of days watching some TV series, okay? And I watched this one series, which is a British series, I think, with Tom Hardy. And this dude goes out and he stabs this rival dude's kid almost 60 times, kills him, starts a gang war, right? And his dad does almost nothing to him, right? Now, I'm not going to get into details in this because it's a long and complicated story. But when I was 16, I lost my dad a job, right? and he beat 7 sorts of shit out of me, right? When I was 16. I didn't stab someone nearly 60 times, and I didn't start a gang war that got 20 people killed. I just lost him a job, but he beat 7 sorts of shit out of me. So then a couple of days later, I'm watching another series where this dude is having the piss taken out of him because he's just started a new job and he has to climb this tower, right? But he's got a safety harness on, so that even if he like falls off, he's not going to die. And I used to go up towers bigger than that when I was like 13 or 14, just for a dare, and I didn't have a safety harness on. It's like you guys, you've got to be men, all right? You're men. Men do risky things. We just do. I don't know. All of the young guys I know are actually good blokes, but it's almost like they're constantly told all through their school years that no, men are not brave, stupid people, but stupid's not the right word. Brave, but you know what I mean.
A bit foolhardy, a bit headstrong.
Yeah. It's almost like you're not told that. Whereas when I was a kid, we just all knew that automatically because that's what we were.
The amount of safetyism is nuts, and especially in the schools. So I'm a parent. I see it. I see it in the schools. But I see it in the sort of corporate environment as well. Not that I'm in it, but when I do encounter it, I see it. When I go on work sites and things, it's the amount of cotton wool is nuts. But it's important to do these brave and challenging things. And look, if I can digress a little bit, certainly in our weaving group, the Basket Weavers in Southeast Queensland, some of the things that we've done is climbing mountains. Now, for those listening, Australian mountains are really sort of anthills with an ambition, let's put it like that. But it's still something challenging. It's a bit dangerous.
Hang on, mate. There's a few in the Australian Capital Territory and Victoria, which are quite reasonable.
That's true. That's true. Let's say Kosciuszko's probably got a claim to the title. You're right.
Yeah.
I have been to the top of that one, by the way. It's quite spectacular. But sort of in our local area, they are, we're talking maybe, 300-400 meters worth of climbing. So it's challenging, but it's not a mountain. And some of the things we've been doing is taking these young men who have not done it before, and we've done a mountain climb or two, which is like, honestly, it's been fantastic, especially seeing some of these guys that don't think they've got it in them to do something hard and challenging, but then they've got their brothers around them, and we give them a bit of support and get them up that hurdle and get
gentle
to the top
encouragement.
Gentle encouragement, absolutely. And seeing for the first time, oh my goodness, this is actually something that I can do. This is something difficult and masculine and challenging that I haven't been able to encounter otherwise in my boring normie life.
Don, can I say to you, and I'm sure you've seen this, what do you do in the military? You get people to go up bloody great hills, a fast rate of knots. And you get the guys to encourage each other, don't you? I mean, that's what you do.
No, in my military, it was. I don't know. I think there was more camaraderie in the British military and in the Australian military. In the Legion, it was very much this is expected, and if you don't reach the absolute heights, then you're an absolutely terrible person. You got to get people killed.
I heard that, Don. I listened to a dude who was in the French Foreign Legion, and he said exactly that. He said, no, they wanted to humiliate you. It was an American, actually. And he said, no, what the French Foreign Legion wanted to do was humiliate you. And I'm listening to this as a British and South African soldier, and it was completely alien to me because no one in the, all right, yeah, some of the NCOs wanted to humiliate you for some stupid thing, but in general terms, and certainly in public, no one wanted to humiliate you. You know, the idea was that you became mates and you all helped each other, basically. And the good NCOs, that's what they were encouraging. But I have heard the Foreign Legion could be different to that. Yeah.
I will say, in all credit to Anglo culture, is that I think that as an aspect of military modus operandi is one of the admirable traits of the Anglosphere. Certainly in modern times, I think you could say similarly of certainly the British and sort of Australian, New Zealand armed forces. I think are cut from a very similar cloth in that way. To an extent, you could probably say that about the Americans as well. Where, as you say, Iron Duke, the Foreign Legion is a very different kettle of fish, and they sort of operate around this notion that when it comes to recruits in the Foreign Legion, especially, is like their idea is to break the person down to their bare base level and then rebuild them as a soldier in the image of the Legion. And I mean, there's very few people who come out the other side of that, either healthy or sane, to be frank. And a lot of
Well, except Don, of course.
Oh, yeah, present company accepted.
Indeed, but the point being is that there are a lot of people who have come out of that experience. I mean, I've even met one or two myself, and they've survived it, they've endured it, but they did not remotely have any fondness for the experience, if I may say so.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some things I'm particularly fond of. There was obviously some camaraderie there, like between the races and religions and stuff like that, and you always met good people. Like there was always a general earned reputation from each group, but you'd always find like the sort of diamonds in the rough, and you'd be able to have like a bit of understanding and camaraderie there. But yeah, it very much is like, the Marines. I think the Marines would be a good example. Like, we are going to break you down. We will take your name. We will give you a new one, and we will remake you, as you said, in our image. I don't know. If you are looking for adventure, it's definitely there. There's definitely costs to it. If you stay in that organization, it will take an aspect of you. Like the two, I don't know if I'd say the two best regiments, but the two hardcore regiments would definitely be the Paras, the 12e Régiment Insurgé de Parachutistes, so the second rep, and it would be Troisième Ré, so the infantry in French Guiana. The parachutists that have done like 20 or so years there, they've just had too much discipline, been too much, they've bought too much into a particular system, and they've been institutionalized, and, il devenir crémé is a little bit burnt out in the head. And, the guys that were in the South American jungle, they spend too long in the jungle, and they've just gone a little bit nutty. They've spent too much time in the jungle, or they've jumped out of one too many planes, and they're disciplined, but there's a couple of screws loose, and the brain's a little bit burnt out.
Interesting, though, because I don't think that ever happens in like the Australian or the British Army. I don't think that happens because you always get enough time off, like every British or Australian soldier will remember a really good leave where they were sent to some, like coastal seaside place, and yeah, the chicks were cute. It was really good. I don't know. I just think the French are a bit crazy with their Foreign Legion dudes, to be honest.
Yeah, there's definitely a particular breed But it's also, I'd say, the system itself. It's all encompassing. It will, you know, there is, for example, you'll be sharing a room with 6 other guys. You will never leave the base. If you want to leave the base, you have to iron your dress uniform, which takes, if you're good, it takes about 2 hours. You have to ask your corporal. You have to ask, well, unless you make
Well,
corporal.
to be fair, Don, right? When you're first in the British Army, or I'm sure it's the same in the Australian Army, but in the British Army certainly, you're looking at the same thing when you're first there. They get a bit looser, like the longer you've been in. But yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds a lot like basic training, but just all the time.
Yeah, that pretty much describes it. Up until the point where you make corporal or ancien légionnaire, or ancien premier class, yeah, you're pretty much in basic training. You are under the thumb, and I can kind of. It's because it's a multi-ethnic sort of thing, and you've got guys. You've just got such a big mix there. You've got guys there that were looking for adventure. You've got like ex-criminals. You've got, you know, guys who really fucked up their life. You have university graduates. I don't know. You've got such like a spread there, and then from all around the world and from every socioeconomical, you know, perspective, and then you've put them in a very, very confined space, and you've just shaken up the box. Like you have to implement an absolute totalitarian and totalizing discipline upon that to make it a coherent force, and the amounts of effort that you have to do to accomplish that is, you know, is monumental. But yeah, I can kind of understand it. Like we're coming from an Anglo perspective, but when you start working with, say, Eastern Europeans, like they see kindness, you know, this, you know, always smiling, always being kind, you know, trying to raise people up as just just weakness, and you can't be like that if that's your natural.
Yeah, it's like a naivete.
Don, can I ask you, right? In the old days, the French Foreign Legion was mostly Germans, I think.
Yeah, it went through different stages.
Yeah. But I mean, like, certainly into the 50s and 60s, it was slightly majority German.
There were a lot of veterans looking for work after the war.
Well, for sure. Yeah, no, I get it. But what I wanted to ask you is, like in the modern Legion, is it more Eastern European or what?
Yeah, you've got like different mafias. So you've got the Anglophone mafia. So obviously Australia, Canada, very few New Zealanders. I think I met one New Zealander in there. Quite a few Americans, and then you have like the Swede, or you know, somewhere from Europe, and they'll be speaking English, and you'll have like 1 or 2 of them there. That's sort of the Anglophone mafia, and it's very hard drinking, you know, hard working, and yeah, you've got quite a few good guys there. Then you've got like the Ruscophone mafia, so all the ex-Soviet bloc. So yeah, they'll all get together. So your Russians, your Ukrainians, Belarusians. You have some Czech. You have Czech and Slovak. You have some Poles as well mixed in there. It used to be very heavily Polish back in the 90s. So a lot of the swear words and sort of cultural references still within the Legion are still very heavily Polish. Like you'll hear the word kurwa quite a lot.
Kurwa.
And then you have the Brazilians. There's quite a few Brazilians in there. They sort of have their own thing. They're very sort of different from the Latinos. So your Colombians, Venezuelans, and so on and so forth. And then you have a lot of Nepalis. There's a ridiculous amount of Nepalis within the Legion. So in Nepal, they have the Gurkha training. So basically, every son of Nepal will go and do this pre-selection. The best of them will go to the Gurkhas. The second best will go to the Singaporean and Indian police force. And then the bottom of the barrel, not the worst guys, but it's not the best, go to then go to the Legion. And there's some quite, that's not to put shade on them, but there's some quite good Nepalese guys there as well. And I think that's pretty much it. Then you have just a smattering of Mongolians, you have some Chinese, you have the odd Japanese guy in there as well, you have some Inuits, you have pretty much everyone and anyone sort of in there.
Most interesting, mate. That's really, really interesting. Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. Guys, could I ask you to kind of summarize? Look, as I say, I hope we can do this stream at least once a month. All right. I think that would be good for young Australian blokes, like young white Australian blokes in particular. But could I ask you guys to start to we've got plenty of time at the moment, but could you start to summarize what you would like people to do?
Yeah, of course, I can sort of start on that. I don't mind. Certainly having something for young white and Italian people to come and be a part of. I'm certainly a fan of that. So look, everybody, come and
Thank
sign
you,
up.
Generico.
Yeah, that was on purpose. I was wondering if you were still listening. No, of course, Furious. Of course, Italians are European. So look, everybody come along to the Basket Weavers. Just go sign up. Doesn't matter where. Anybody who is interested in organizing more, contact Don through one way or the other. I'm certain if you contact anybody here or put a thing through the Weavers chat, we will put you in touch with Don. If you're interested in doing anything to bring people together or be a community organizer, come and be a part of that. The other project, which I suppose didn't get much of a mention, is there was a Shieldings event last year in Australia, which was good to bring everybody from all across the country together. We're not doing it this year, which is a bit of a problem, I know. Hopefully for next year, we're going to do one. So we're hoping in lieu of that to do a bit of print media. So if anybody's got any sort of editing ability or, they're good photographer or anything like that, or they want to publish an article, reach out to me. We're trying to publish that through Wilfings. So hopefully, Furious, you can give us something just as tremendous as your presentation at the First Fleet Forum. So those are sort of the two big projects at the moment, is Don's leadership group and the print media that we're working on, and certainly through Basket Weavers and building community. Is there anything else you might add to that, Don?
Yeah, I would say just get involved, get out, find your people. There are a number of different organizations. If the Basket Weavers is not for you, if you're, I don't know, higher or lower or whatever, like if you're a lawyer and you want to be more institutionally minded, there's organizations for that. If you're, just sort of a working class Joe, then, maybe the Basket Weavers for you. But you have the British Australian Society, which is they do their own things. They have their own events. They're more
British Australia community.
Sorry, they're doing their own thing, sort of on the East Coast. Hopefully, they'll come to Perth sometime soon. You have the ANA, the Australian Nativist Association, a fraternity that was instrumental in the Federation of Australia, and was behind a lot of the newspapers and stuff. They have a very storied history, but if you want to be more institutionally minded, these people are definitely for you. Of course, you have the Basket Weavers. If you want to be social, if you want to connect, if you want to network, definitely get in touch with your local weave.
Yeah,
And
basically,
I don't know.
there's things going on that you can be a part of. It's never going to happen though if you're not in the game. You know, you got to be in it to win it, or so they say. And it doesn't matter what your interests are. If you're coming to these meetups and meeting people, you'll inevitably find people that share your interests. And then, you know, like for example, some people that do book clubs on the side or something like that. It can be as minimal as that, or it can be as large as being one of those people that is organizing people and bringing them together. But the point is, there is action here in Australia, and there is certainly things going on to keep everybody's interest.
Yeah, I guess just to finish up, if you are a basket weaver in any of the current cities and you want to be more organized, you want to have a structure that you can follow, and a plan that you can put into place to grow your local community, definitely get in touch. I can help you with that. I'm looking for people in Sydney, Tasmania, basically anywhere that's not Perth, Canberra, or Brisbane.
Melbourne, I hope, Don. Melbourne is like the biggest shit lib feminist crap hole in the world. We really need a group in Melbourne, for God's
I'm
sake.
really hoping
Yeah.
someone from Melbourne is listening. There's a Melbourne group. Just to give everybody the rundown, there's weavers in Brisbane, Canberra, Newcastle, New Zealand, Perth, Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, and Tasmania. So please,
Newcastle is a good town. I like Newcastle in mid New South Wales. That's a nice town. Used to be big time dockyard industrial town. Good place. It's a bit like if anyone is listening to this from England, Newcastle is kind of like Australia's north of England in some ways.
I was going to say it's like Liverpool but hot in a sense.
I'd say more like Newcastle, but
Oh,
hot.
fair enough. Yeah, but hot. Yeah. And also
Fair
for anyone
enough.
in the know, Newcastle is home to the most base bodybuilder alive, Lee Priest. So try and get him into basket weavers while you're at it.
we'll put a name out there. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and they once had a really bad earthquake in Newcastle, like by Australian standards, like loads
that's
of
true.
buildings fell down. I only know this because the late love of my life went to uni in Newcastle. She came from Taree, which was a bit south of Newcastle, I think. Maybe it was north. Can't remember now. But anyway, ex-love of my life, late love of my life, and she went to university in Newcastle, which is why I ended up going there. And they also have this brilliant fort with 8-inch guns in it, which once, I believe, fired at a Japanese submarine in World War II, I think.
Oh, Don left us. Oh,
No, he's come back. He's come back.
Oh, there he is.
He's come back.
Welcome back, Don.
But yeah, guys, hopefully, if you're an Australian, and particularly if you're a younger Australian, you will realize there are friends who you can go and find. Because this is one thing that's become clear to me anyway, talking to my younger British mates, is that people get isolated because the mainstream media is our enemy, totally. The government is our enemy, totally. And like almost everything is our enemy, really. It's very easy as a young Anglo-Celtic white man to think that everyone is your enemy, and they're not. There are friends out there if you go look for them. I hope that Dom will return to us in a minute. But yeah, there are friends out there if you listen to this stream. There you go, mate. There are friends out there you can find, and you can go meet them, maybe like for a walk or in a cafe or in a bar and have a beer or something like that. And there are mates out there you can find if you go look for them. And I hope anyway, this is the main thing the young Anglo-Celtic white dudes will take from this stream. Is
Indeed.
I hope so.
There's
Yeah.
mates out there.
I know brevity is not my style, and I mean Generico, you probably know as well as anyone, and so does Iron Duke. But if I could summarize it in very brief terms, do what you can with what you have, and look to yourself before anywhere else, if you're able. That's a good starting
absolutely, absolutely. That's a very good starting point. What are we going to do with the rest of the 20 minutes of your?
Oh my God! Furious said one sentence and stopped. What's going on?
That was the shortest thing that Furious
Couldn't believe
Bermax
it.
has ever said.
Glad we're recording that. This is unheard of.
Someone's going to have to,
Buy a lot of ticket, gentlemen.
someone's going to have to clip that. Furious Pertinax being really brief. But no, it's all right.
He just said what he had to say, and then that was it. I couldn't believe it.
I'm going to annoy Furious.
If I may.
No, Furious.
Please, by all means.
I'm going to annoy you now, mate, and say, when are we doing our Caesar stream? Which I've asked you about doing at least
I know you have.
4 times.
No, you have. It's still on the to-do list. And the other thing is, I've got a few things that are actually out of date. I do have to follow up because I've done part 1 with our dear friend Bede of Britannia, formerly known as Hitman.
I like Bede. Bede's a good.
He's a wonderful chap. Very, very intelligent. Actually, I basically call him like Apostolic Majesty Junior in some ways because he reminds me very much of AM in some ways. And I'd say he's closest peer in terms of historical knowledge. He's an extremely erudite and impressive young man. So we're going to do part 2 of Belisarius, I would hope, before the end of the month.
Oh, that'll be cool.
And I'm like a year overdue to catch up with Auron again because he wanted me to do a stream regarding what it is to be a dictator. Because I'm sure each of you guys know that it's a word that is used very erroneously in the world, and that you sort of look at how even like mainstream right-wing media will frame someone like, say, and I'm not casting a judgment on this, like
Mussolini, for example.
Well, I was going to say
like Cornelius Sulla.
But I was going to say, like in the present day, right? Like, Muammar Gaddafi is a dictator. Saddam Hussein's a dictator. Putler is a dictator, and it's just sort of thrown away as an away word to be used as a pejorative. Where actually a dictator in the Roman Republic is actually quite a nuanced thing. And I dare say, in a world of political gridlock and subversion, there's actually a good deal of people thinking, "Oh, is that what Caesar actually did? Interesting. Maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. Maybe like bureaucratic morass and stochastic terror is actually a worse alternative than a leader."
Furious. Caesar was one of the best national leaders any nation has ever had, in my humble opinion. But
I would be not too far from disagreeing with you. He's certainly in if you had a top 10 or a top 5, I would certainly have him in there, and he'd be very close to the top.
100. What did Caesar want? Caesar was this very high up aristocrat in terms of Roman culture, but he was what do they call those guys?
Was it the Optimates?
Well, no. He was
Caesar. Yeah, Caesar was in the Populares.
I was going to say he was a patrician by birth, but by what he did.
I was going to say it's a crude word to say, but political orientation. It's not the right word, but for the sake of the discussion,
and Caesar wanted to like open more places up to ordinary Romans to go and live in those places and start their own farms and stuff like this.
Well, funny you say that, Andrew, because that's exactly what it is. It was to restore the hinterland back to the Roman people who had been robbed of their hinterland by the senatorial aristocratic classes who started, ill-gone gains is maybe not the right way to say, but because of the huge number of deaths that the Romans experienced in expanding the Republic, well,
Yeah.
all these farms went fatherless and sonless and were basically put to
It
sale.
was predatory political activity. Let's call it that.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, at the very least, they function. It doesn't apply to then, but as we'd understand today's vulture capitalists, and
Well,
they would buy farmland and then build them into slave, basically what we call latifundia, farming slave
Yes.
conglomerate.
Yes.
Yeah, and
exa-
Julius Caesar
exactly.
wanted to restore them. He wanted to make Rome
Yes.
great again.
And they killed him for it.
Yeah, and bear in mind, right, that Caesar, who was a patrician, he was one of the highest ranking kind of Roman dudes, but he was actually a popularis, as Furious said. But the fact was that Caesar could see that, the old Italy, not just Rome, because by Caesar's time it was Italy, basically. It was being overtaken by these big slave estates, and the ordinary Roman smallholder or small farmer, they were all being destroyed because in the days before Caesar, to be fair, if you were a Roman citizen who owned your own small holding and could buy your own armor and weapons, then you had to go and fight for Rome, which was great if you only had to fight for 1 or 2 years. But when you had to fight for 5 or 6 years or 10 years even, when Rome was fighting Carthage, all of
or
a
Macedon
sudden,
or Gaul or whoever, yeah.
yeah. By the time you got home, might happen that your wife and your children had been evicted from their little small holding or their farm, and you didn't own any land anymore. And
Correct.
that was what Caesar was trying to put right.
Absolutely. And there's also you mentioned about the citizen soldier who goes out to fight, and maybe doesn't return for 3 or 4 campaigning seasons. And you mentioned Carthage, which is sort of circles back to the point I want to make, is that, and that's providing that soldier survives. The one thing you noticed
if he
about
dies, then they're all fucked. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Like if he doesn't have a sibling, as in like a brother or nephews or a son to inherit, then that plot of land immediately will go up for sale at a bargain price and snapped up by someone with the money to purchase it. And the thing is too, is that if you look at even a number of Roman victories, particularly say in the Macedonian Wars, but particularly the Roman defeats, because obviously battles such as Trasimene and Cannae in the Second Punic War are famous, and rightly so. But the Romans suffer a lot of casualties in the First Punic War, particularly at sea, and particularly in their aborted invasion of Africa when they tried to bring Carthage to terms in the First Punic War. In both instances, Rome loses, probably in terms of total casualties, 500,000 men each time.
Oh, it's huge.
And the demographic consequences reverberate literally down the centuries. And so the consequences of that can hardly be articulated. And this is why we end up with that system.
I'd love to add a little something to that, if I may.
Go ahead. As you may well do, Generic, could be my guest.
If I may get a word in. No, I was reading some time ago The Ancient City by Numa Denis Fustel du Collonges, who articulates the way of living in the classical times. We're talking about ancient Rome, ancient Greece, that sort of thing, where it was structurally important to a man's religion, to his family, to his being, to have sort of an ancestral plot of land, because that was where his fathers were buried. That was where his family was raised, and it wasn't just a material thing of, we hear it in modernity, and it's like, oh well, you lost your farm and you've got to move to the city. Well, what you're losing really is that spiritual connection to your ancestry, the place where you worship, the place where you form that spiritual grounding in the world. And it's not just that that they lost materially, but they lost sort of spiritually, because all of these bloodlines suddenly didn't have this ancestral connection anymore to the places where their fathers were, and they couldn't worship in the way that they used to worship. And so it was more than just a physical loss; it was a real spiritual devastation across Rome.
One might say that in a way that our ilk would understand it, it was the great chain of being broken in a spiritual and physical sense.
It absolutely was. It was the breaking of that great chain of being. And what you had is kind of a nice parallel to modernity. These now rootless, the cosmopolitan types, because they literally had their roots stripped of them.
Yeah, they were little smallholders in Italy, and they had to go to Rome because that's where the work was, and they were living in these big tower blocks that the Romans built. Sometimes 6 stories high, and they had to work as day laborers in Rome. It's not the same as owning your own land. It's
Quite.
not. It's just not the same.
Not at all. And if we may just follow from Dave Smith's comment here, he's absolutely correct. Indeed, he also made a nice salad. So let's keep that in mind.
Well,
Thank you, Caesar.
Oh yeah, that's the most important
The Caesar
part.
salad, yeah.
If I
yeah,
couldn't
yeah,
eat a
yeah.
salad with croutons, I just wouldn't bother.
Yes, and don't forget the grilled chicken.
Dave Smith might be a girl, I think, but okay. I don't eat much rabbit food, which is what salad is, but that's just
Correct.
me.
You are absolutely correct.
That's
Mr.
just me. I know girls who love bunny rabbits, and I don't hate them. Don't get me wrong. I don't.
I just prefer bunny rabbits on my plate personally, but anyway.
You know what? I'm not sure I've ever eaten rabbit. My dad did.
Delicious.
It's
My dad
delicious.
did. My dad did, but he was in Wales during World War II.
Mhm.
He was evacuated there, and he often got rabbit stew. But he was very well treated in Wales, and he liked it. So
Rabbit is
he
delicious eating.
yeah, and he also liked helping with the harvest because they got time off from school to help with the harvest, which my dad thought was great fun. And he was a London kid, so that was
Oh, there you go. That would have got the novelty for him then, being in sort of countryside Wales.
Yeah, no, he loved it. There was a World War One Welsh soldier who used to put my dad on his shoulder and show him around. And my dad was about, I don't know, 5 or 6 then, something like that, 7 maybe. And my dad just loved his time in South Wales. He thought it was great because he was well fed, well looked after. He didn't really like the chapel that he had to go to every Sunday because he couldn't understand the Welsh. But,
oh dear.
Yeah, because it was all in Welsh. But he put up with it.
Back in the day when your congregation and parish priest shared your heritage and proximity compared to nowadays,
Yeah, they were all local Welsh people, They took these London kids in because, they didn't want them to get destroyed by bombs. But on the other hand, they were all still Welsh people. And you know what? They didn't want Wales to be invaded by people from the third world. Surprisingly enough.
No, we still don't.
Well, yeah, absolutely, mate. I don't think
enough.
none of us are going to disagree with that, mate. None of us are going to disagree with that. Could I ask, guys, if people want to get in touch with you, how should they do it?
Sure. Well, I'm on X. I'll tell you what. I'll reply to this video with my handle just so that everybody can get in contact with me. Otherwise, definitely through the Basket Weavers website, which just Google the Basket Weavers or Beowulf Foundation, and you should find us, or a link to join the Basket Weavers. Otherwise, I think, Don, is there any way people can get in touch with you more directly?
Yeah, Legionnaire_Don on the Basket Weaver server and on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm 45678 Generico on X, so come find me there. While I've got Furious on the spot, if this publication goes ahead, can we count on you for an article?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Generico. I didn't realize you had something in the works.
Oh yeah, we were talking before about, because the Shieldings event didn't go ahead this year, which is all very sad.
In lieu of that, no, I remember now. So
Yeah.
you've rejigged my memory. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll be very happy to. That's no problems at all. So yeah, just DM me further details, and I'll make sure to,
You're a gentleman.
Help
It's
you-
not
help
true
you
what
out
they
with
say
that.
about you. You're a gentleman.
No,
Heaven
no,
be
he-
praised.
no, he's not. I've been trying to get him to do a Caesar stream for nearly 2 years, and he still hasn't done it. Okay, so
Look,
I-
can I
I
just
do-
say
I
how
do- we
on
shall
brand
do
it
it.
is? How on brand it is for him to be late.
Late.
He was late
Late.
all the time. Late to IRL events, late to the stream, late to Caesar, late all the way through.
well,
Unpopular opinions.
yeah, but you know what they say, don't you, mate? If you're late to all the events, you end up getting the best girl. That's
Correct.
what they say. That's what they say. You
Early
end up
bird gets
getting
the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese.
Yeah, the guy who's late all the time ends up getting the most beautiful female there is. So maybe that'll happen. But
There's a method
yeah.
to the Italian madness, gentlemen. Trust me. But anyway, no, we shall do Iron Duke. Don't you worry.
Well, yeah, but we all know about Italians and women. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Oh, my
Furious.
goodness.
I was also
Sorry, go
going
ahead.
to
Go
ask.
ahead.
I was
Indeed.
also going to ask. You're in Perth, as I believe.
Well, out of, but yes, I spend a lot of my time in Perth. Yeah, I was going to say, if you're down to catch up, we'll tee it up.
Sure. I'll send you a message on Twitter.
Yeah, mate, that sounds like a wonderful plan. Yeah, because I'm sort of here for a while, so yeah, more than happy to do something if you want to go ahead with it, or even just like to catch up, like I said. So, because I Generica told me you were in Perth, so I was like, oh great, another local. So
Yeah, I have
That's-
some events come up, or either I can I'll be heading down south when I head back as well.
sweet. Yeah, no, all good, mate. Let me know.
That is how easy it is, ladies and gentlemen. That is exactly how easy it is to reach
Correct.
out and form communities, and that's what we've tried to communicate over the course of about 2 hours now. And it was simple as
Exactly. Indeed.
All right. All I'm going to say, guys, is I'm quite happy to do this once a month. I know that Don said to me before we started, because of his lifestyle at the moment, once a month suits him. I'd really like to do a Southern muster once a month. If you guys would like to do it, I'm more than happy to.
I actually quite like the title as well, Lion Duke. That's quite nicely thought of. Southern Muster.
Generico's title, mate.
I was
Oh,
about to give you
well,
full props for it, ING.
Well done, Generico.
Thank you.
Either way,
Thank you.
I like it. It's very fitting. I was going to say, especially because
I
I spent
tell
like
you
the last 2 days
what, I
driving on a
tell
motorbike
you-
following sheep. It's especially fitting for me. So
I tell you why I liked it, because when I first came to Australia, like I met this beautiful Australian girl in South Africa, and that's how I ended up coming to Australia. And one of the first things I did was go to the Sydney Roll show in 2000. I think, in fact, that was the first like big thing I did in Australia. And I've still got the beer cooler from it, and it's the Australian Muster or something like that. I think that they have on it.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, so that's why I like the Southern Muster story. I thought that was cool. Maybe next time when we do it, I'll put a Southern Cross thing up as the thumbnail,
Yeah,
I
we
didn't
can
want.
workshop that. We'll find some nice art or something. I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, listen, if you guys have got better suggestions, just give it to me and I'll put it up.
I mean, me, Generico, and Don could always get like a Southern Cross tattooed on our ankle somewhere. You know, like what all the all the country
like-
boys.
Like a gang. Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I could definitely get behind that.
I-
It's what all the cool
that
kids are doing.
That might look cool on a girl, but on a bloke, no.
No,
No,
I was
Do it across
obviously
your
kidding.
chest like a man.
Yeah, true. I was going to say it's funny because one of my mates who's an ex-serviceman did that. I was like, dude, the ankle of all places. What the hell were you thinking?
No.
It could only have been worse on the lower back.
Yeah.
Patriotic tramp stamp.
Yeah. Do
The
it
most
as
patriotic of tramp stamps, yes.
a tramp stamp for the ankle.
Here's
a
one for the country
goal
lads.
Thing. That's a goal thing, guys. Honestly, don't do it. all right?
Only the classiest of discussions here at the Southern Muster.
Oh, see?
Oh, come on. You got to have some. What are Australians known for? A very good sense of humor. All right.
Bit of bands never killed anyone.
Yeah.
No, it's good for us, of course.
Yeah, you cannot do a stream about Australia with no sense of humor. I sometimes see some fairly right wing, I guess, Australians, and where they lose out is they don't have a sense of humor. You've got to have a sense of humor.
Oh, you
be
got to laugh at
Australian.
yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Look,
yeah.
frankly, I'm surprised with the four of us Australians in a space together, and none of us has dropped an F bomb, none of us has dropped a C bomb. For the four of us listening,
What
it's very
are
out
you
of
talking?
character.
What the
But this is
fuck
why we
are you
need-
talking about, Jenner?
But this is why this is why we need this is why we need Chris Gard though, because like every third word would be that, you know, in typical
Oh,
Queensland.
it would be there. Oh, and look, Iron Duke, if I can request, please,
Oh.
if we can open this with Chris Gard's fantastic rendition of that song every time, yes, once a month I will be here for it, just for that alone.
I was thinking next time I might do Chris Gard's I'm Going Home to South Australia. That's a good tune.
He doesn't miss.
Chris Gard, yeah, really.
But that's a good tune. And it's a early 19th century song, and it's a sailor song, and it's, you know, this Australian dude, he's going home to South Australia. So
If we could just go through and highlight a heap of Australian folk music, that would be awesome.
I agree,
every-
Don. Yeah, I agree, Don. There's a lot of good Australian songs, poetry, art. There's a lot, actually. That's something. Listen, I'm not going to do it. Like I said, I'm a pommy bastard. But you and Generico and Furious could certainly come out with some really good stuff on that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's some creative people in the space.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, if it's not within our personal remit, I mean, our networks are wide enough that chances are we'll know someone who'll know someone who might know someone. So,
For sure,
you know,
absolutely.
it's always the case of that.
Yes.
There are a couple of good guys on my Discord who are Australians, who I hope the next time we do this will come and join it because they're excellent.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yeah, that would be that'd be perfect. I'm actually trying to get in contact with some singers in Perth. If anyone is a folk singer or is skilled in that area, definitely get in contact. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for.
Could put some feelers out for you, Don. Give me like a couple of weeks, I'll get back to you. Or like, give me like a week or two and I'll see what I can come up with.
Definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And speaking of music, can I actually, do you mind if I share a little something that Gard sent me, Mr. Einjuk?
Please do,
So-
Furious.
So guys, so ladies and gentlemen, this is courtesy of Chris Gard, and you can thank me for playing this.
Oh my god.
Hold on. Did he catch the laugh?
That's perfect.
He sends that to me every year. It's like, You'll send me that clip.
That's amazing.
I
He's
love
a funny
Gar.
guy.
He is. He's
Yeah,
hilarious.
he needs to come back. Quite frankly, I understand, but we feel his absence.
Yes. Wife Jack is long gone. We need Mr. Guard back.
Furious, can I ask you? Have
Sure.
you seen? Do you watch Zoomer Historian at all?
We're mutuals, and I occasionally catch his streams, but just like with the volume of stuff I keep up with, I don't get a chance to watch everything. But why do you ask? What's up?
Well, did you watch his video about the Italian-Ethiopian war?
I have not, but no. Now that I know he has done it, I'll
It's
have to do
all-
it because I
it's-
actually had family in that conflict.
It's
obviously.
about a year. It's about
which
an
side?
hour.
I'll take a
I'm
wild
joking.
guess.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I was just about to say on the civilized side, but okay. But yeah, it's about an hour long, and it's really good. I watched it, and I learned heaps that I didn't know about that war.
Because one thing I don't know if you guys know, but and I don't want to harp on it because this stream's meant to be about other stuff. But just because we're on the topic, do you know, Iron Duke, that there was what they call an Italian Lawrence of Arabia who fought in Abyssinia? Have you ever heard of this story before?
Yes.
Amadeo Gillette, or Gillet, I suppose, if he's French. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, definitely. Actually, I was going to say, once we get around to doing C's, if you want to do a one-off stream, that's someone who we should talk about because it's actually he's quite an amazing character, and he lived up until the age of like 102. He only died like in 2014 or something. He was quite a grand old man.
Yeah. The interesting story, but yeah, if you go to Ethiopia in the 1930s, the whole country was into slavery and all the rest of it. One of the things the Italians did was they banned slavery everywhere they went.
It's like imagine like fascists arriving to liberate your people from slavery. Like that's quite one of the ages.
Those bastards. How could you? Yeah, no one will ever thank you for it. You know, the British Empire flew ships all around the world.
It was a
into the
mistake,
practice.
mate.
The Italians did it in Ethiopia. You know, the Americans fought tooth and nail to do it. No one thanks you. You're always going to be hated for it.
No, it was absolutely a mistake for the British Empire to get rid of slavery. We should have just kept it. It would have made things far easier, to be honest.
The only great tragedy about that is, Iron Duke, is for all the treasure and blood that was spilt in that endeavor, the fact that those who have benefited from that liberation have nothing but contempt for the British Empire and its people. Like, imagine being such a pack of ingrates. Like, honestly.
Well, I'm sorry. We should have.
Well, I mean, Australia is a very good example. In Australia, slavery was never, ever legal. Never once. Not for a minute.
Exactly.
So, but what does Australia get from its Aboriginals? Oh, you enslaved us. Yeah, all right. Sure.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry we came to all your nothing and built all these roads and hospitals and schools and increased your standard of living, you know.
Yeah,
entirely,
mate. Entirely.
Thank you for the Gibbs me dats, but anyway.
Oh yeah. But anyway, here's a spear to the thigh. It's called a macarata. Enjoy that. Look, gentlemen, I'm sorry to say, but I do have to wrap. It's getting very, very late for me here.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us, gents. Do go and check out the Basket Weavers in Australia. And if I can get it to do so, I will play us out with this thing, which I like, by the way.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Cheers, Jericho. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
I was
Been a pleasure.
born, heave away, all away. South Australia is my home. We're bound for South Australia. All the way, you're rolling kings to me. Heave away, all the way, you'll hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia. Now as I walked out one morning fair, heave away, all away. away. 'Twas there I met Miss Nancy Blair. We're bound for South Australia. All the way, you rolling kings, to me heave away. All the way, all the way, you'll hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia. I shook her up, I shook her down. Heave away, all the way. I shook her round and round the town. We're bound for South Australia. All the way, you rolling kings, to me heave away. All the way, all the way, you'll hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia. There's just one thing that grieves my mind. Heave away, all the way, that's leaving Nancy Blair behind. We're bound for South Australia. All the way, you're rolling kings, to me heave away. All the way, all the way, you'll hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia. And when we're walloping off Cape Horn, heave away. All the way, you'll wish to God you'd never been born. We're bound for South Australia. All the way, you're rolling kings, to me heave away. All the way, all the way, you'll hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia. I wish I was on Australia's strand. Heave away, all the way, with a bottle of whiskey in me hand. We're bound for South Australia. All the way, you're rolling kings, to me heave away. All the way, all the way, you'll hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia.
Bravo.
There you go, boys. That's
That was beautiful.
early 19th century song about Australia. It's a good place. Yeah, Australia, I tell you what, guys, if you're in, I don't know, Britain or Canada or America or somewhere, Australia is a damn good place to visit. Really is. Some really nice things to see. And it's a good country. But it is, like the rest of the Anglosphere, it is suffering at the moment. I think everyone on here would agree that Australians are far poorer now than they were a decade ago. Far poorer, because energy costs have gone up so much, etc. But yeah, if you're a young male Australian, please go check out the Basket Weavers with Generica and Don.
Here, here. Well, thank you. I enjoyed
I'll
it.
be hearing from you.
Yeah, good guys. Thank you very much for joining us. I thought that was a very enjoyable stream. And hopefully we'll do it again in a month. And, you know, in 10 years or so, Furious and I will do a stream on Julius Caesar. You never know. Anyway,
It will
go.
You have
go-
my
go-
word. We will do it.
All right, mate. Go well, guys. I think we're going to be back tomorrow. I think with a splendid isolation history stream. I just don't know what it'll be. Yeah, because it's probably just going to be me. So we'll see. In which case, it will be some very obscure South African history. But anyway,
Splendid.
go well.
Cheerio, guys. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
See ya.
Yes, I am trying.